begin, we would like to start with an opening and presentation on colonial violence on Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit individuals by Suzanne Smoke, who's a member of Alderville First Nations and sits with the Bear Clan. Currently working in community outreach and engagement, anti-human trafficking for Muskoka Parry Sound Sexual Assault Services, Indigenous knowledge keeper and pipe carrier, and sun dancer. Suzanne combines a holistic approach to sexual assault and domestic violence, Indigenous mental health and trauma, and helps navigate and advocate through the multifaceted healthcare system.
Bonjour, Nia Nadezhnikosh, Genokwe, Makwadodem, Alderville Donchaba. I'm speaking in the sovereign language of this traditional territory. York Region sits within Williams Treaty Territory and on the borders of the Dish with One Spoon Territory. My English name is Suzanne Smoke. Genokwe is Golden Eagle Woman. I sit with the Bear Clan, which is a medicine clan, and I welcome you to Take Back the Night. This event is very poignant for me. It is based in that colonial sexual violence against Indigenous women, but also gender-based violence against all of our relatives Two-Spirit as well. So I welcome you to my traditional territory on behalf of Take Back the Night. I want to acknowledge not only the land, but also the water. That Nibi, that water is sacred and gives us life. And we as women, we are water carriers. And before that new life comes to the earth, that water comes first. And also we as women, we are the only doorway with which the human spirit comes to the earth. So we are sacred beings as water carriers. So I want to acknowledge the land, the water, and all of creation when we talk about our relationships. Many people think it's the two-legged between each of us, but really our relationship is all-encompassing with creation. The flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the standing tree nation, and especially, as I said, Mother Earth and the Nibi, and that is the lifeblood of our mother. So I welcome each and every one of you here tonight to Take Back the Night. Again, my name is Suzanne Smoke. I'm actually coming in virtually because I am on the Leonard Peltier Walk to Justice. I am walking from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., which is 1,103 miles across the United States, in recognition of the injustices to Indigenous people that are being incarcerated across the nation, and the longest-standing Indigenous political prisoner, Leonard Peltier, who was an innocent man who was unjustly convicted for something that he didn't do, which happens to many, many Indigenous people, because we are obstacles to the land and to the water, and that which we pray for. So again, welcoming you, each and every one of you, to Take Back the Night, and I thank you all, and we will continue on. Miigwech. Bonjour. Again, my name is Suzanne Smoke, Genokwe, Golden Eagle Woman. I'm a member of the Mississaugas of Rice Lake, Alderville First Nation, and I sit with the Bear Clan. My most important role in my community is being a life giver and a mother to my daughter, Okamagijikokwe, Cedar Smoke, who is a member of the Chippewas of Georgina Island here within the traditional territory, and her English name, again, her decolonized name is Cedar Smoke. Her spirit name is Head Woman of the Sky World. Currently, I work as the Area Outreach and Program Coordinator for the Muskoka Parry Sound Sexual Assault Services, and I'm working to stem the tide of violence against Indigenous women and girls. My main focus at MPSS is anti-human trafficking within the Simcoe-Muskoka region, also all across Turtle Island. I sit on the ATT Coalition as well as a consultant in the past with the U.S. Consulate in the Greater Toronto area, and currently working on developing a 24-hour response protocol model to all stakeholders working within both Indigenous and non-Indigenous agencies and service workers serving those that have been trafficked. My knowledge base comes within women's traditional teachings, the 7 stages of life teachings. I'm a pipe carrier, I'm a sun dancer, I'm a proud member and the president of the American Indian Movement Southern Ontario Sanctioned Chapter, and my extensive knowledge in harm reduction and trauma-informed healing methods comes from over 30 years of walking the red road with many elders and teachers. So I really want to talk briefly about the issues of colonial sexual violence against Indigenous people. Specifically MMIW, we know that the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women is an ongoing painful issue for the Indigenous community that needs resolution in order for us to be able to move forward with better relationships in this country. Those families that have lost women to violence need to have some answers because they will be unwilling to engage in dialogues around reconciliation until that issue is addressed. These families are hurting, and because they're hurting, other people around them are going to be hurting. And the Canadian public, I think, should feel that they're hurting as well. We should be standing up with them and saying we need to know what happened and we need to make sure this never happens again. This previous passage is from Senator Murray Sinclair. He is the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. And we really have to talk about those hard truths here in Canada. We know that with the recent visit of the Pope to our traditional territory, really looking at the doctrine of discovery in 1452, and really the doctrine of discovery was about invading, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all pagans whatsoever, and they are considered enemies of Christ, to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and convert them to his or her and their use and profit. And that is the Pope Nicholas V, the Papal Bull of 1452. Really understanding that currently today we are still under the doctrine of discovery. We are still part of the Indian Act, which is the most colonial racist piece of legislation. And I really want to go back through the history and understanding violence against Indigenous women from a historical perspective. The Royal Proclamation of 1763. This was a historical record of diseases, violence, and the depopulation of the Americas during the influenza and smallpox epidemics in 1493 to 1520. It also triggered successive epidemics until at least the 19th century, which is really key when we look at this great sickness that is happening all across the earth today. British colonial law without input, consult, or consent of Indigenous peoples, and we became subjects of the Crown and under protection of the Crown. And so the impacts on Indigenous women and community, there are waves of trauma and grief that have not been resolved within the Aboriginal psyche and have become deeply embedded in the collective memory of Aboriginal people. Indigenous women have become property of men. Treaty negotiations between the British and only Indigenous men. Indigenous female leadership was not valued or legitimized. It displaced women from leadership, negotiation, and spokesperson roles. Again, understanding this is a settler foreign government who came here without land, who came to our land, looked at us, devalued us, dehumanized us, and then started creating laws that actually erased my whole identity as an Indigenous woman. Indigenous women cannot be civilized as they are considered property of their fathers and husbands. With the Gradual Civilization Act and the Enfranchisement Act, these were all assimilation efforts. Military allies elevated the status of male warriors and leaders. Policies that supported the eradication of the Indian problem, becoming subjects of the Crown, and to establish legitimate land claim of the territory for British expansion. So again, really understanding these acts, these laws that were created, the impacts on Indigenous women, again, we cannot be civilized as we are considered property of our fathers and husbands. Men who learned English no longer were considered native. They lost their status and had to remove their property, which was their wife and children, from the reserve. The wife and children had no rights to land or monies he was allocated. All descendants of enfranchised Indians had to follow their father's lineage, thus negating any further status Indians. So again, really understanding that our very identity was threatened with all of these laws. And currently in place today, we are still under the Indian Act, which was formulated in 1876. It's still in existence today. The goal of the act was to assimilate by means of a series of laws that determined who was Indigenous. Governance, what legal activities natives could partake in, and penalties for illegal activity. There was hierarchical male privilege, and violence against women was normalized. Excuse me. In order to qualify as a status Indian, one had to be a male or married to a male or a child of. Indigenous women could not vote nor run for leadership roles. Sexual deviancy reporting process for Indian women who had children out of wedlock or left their husbands. Let me just read that again, because this is huge. Sexual deviancy reporting process for Indigenous women who had children out of wedlock or left their husbands. An Indigenous woman's status or identity was tied to her father's reserve and then transferred to the husband's. Men held exclusive on-reserve property rights. Indigenous women could own no property. An Indigenous woman loses her status and identity as Indian if she marries anyone not status, and she would be forcibly removed from the reserve as well as her children. And this is still very much at play today. I believe it was as little as 2010, the Indigenous Matrimonial Act was changed, but really understanding that many Indigenous women have suffered great losses of not having these leadership roles, not having access to property, not having access to land, and really just negated as human beings within our own communities. The eugenics movement of 1900 to 1975, again, this was about weeding out undesirables. This was medical sterilization, most often done without consent. Indigenous women were targets for forced sterilization, and that still continues today. Many Indigenous women were seeing survivors' reports that many were sterilized without their consent. Indigenous women who had children out of wedlock were deemed mentally defected and sterilized. This is 1900 to 1975, the sexual deviancy reporting programs implemented by the government to target Indigenous women. Those that refused treatment were sterilized. Indigenous girls in residential school would be sterilized before release. In 1937, the Sexual Sterilization Act was amended to include individuals incapable of intelligent parenthood, specifically targeting Indigenous women. And then, of course, many of you have heard recently the residential school era. From 1870, the last residential school closed in 1996, removing Indigenous children from the influences of culture, community, and family from the age of 18 months to 16 years old. The most profound statement by the Indigenous the government leader at that time who was running Indigenous affairs, Sir Duncan Campbell Scott, his famous quote of "kill the Indian, save the child." Extreme forms of violence, sexual predation, child labor, medical experimentation, and resulting in 50% mortality rate within the residential schools. I don't know how many of you have children, but I don't know how many graves are at your children's school. But for Indigenous people, that was a normality, that we had graves in all of our schoolyards. And again, those graves imply that there's a knowledge of, that there's a memorial. Many of these children that are being unearthed today across Canada and across Turtle Island, because there is no border for us, they were large pits that our children were thrown into and hidden from. Many of our families did not know what happened to our children and to our family members. And that's really coming forward right now in the public. And I believe that Canadians should be horrified by what they're hearing and understanding about the residential school era. The intergenerational impacts, 3 and 4 generations of Indigenous children growing up in widespread trauma, violence, and physical and sexual abuse. Religion was indoctrinated, loss of culture, language, and ceremony. So again, the impacts on Indigenous women, indoctrination aimed at destroying and disrupting traditional roles and preparing young girls to be good Christian wives. Indigenous women are taught that their bodies are sinful and dirty, and also taught Canadians the same thing. And many, many times, Indigenous women are looked at as less than and devalued, and we can see that playing out in the courtrooms and in the injustices that are happening across the nation when we see young 14-year-old girls like Tina Fontaine, who was murdered. The murderer admitted to drugging her, having sex with her. She was found wrapped in his blanket or his rug from his rooming house and thrown into the river in Winnipeg. He was acquitted of any wrongdoing. That is one story out of hundreds. There are so many that I could name names of, and it's just really Indigenous women. Canadians were taught that we are less than. Labor camps, domestic labor. 16-year-old girls were released into settler communities, in some cases mail-order brides, creating the first sex trafficking network through residential schools. So really our future and our vision, what we had pre-contact, women had respected roles as she was the backbone to the family, community, and nation. The spiritual foundation was coordinated beliefs. We had strong, healthy families. Children, elders, men, and women, all with respected roles. Balanced roles of men and women. Respected roles of women as life givers. And we were the main teachers in preparing our youth for the future survival of our people. Understanding that from contact and colonization, residential schools destroyed our families, our spiritual beliefs, our language, and our culture. And I'm going to say almost, because our future is strong with our youth, and I will talk about that. We were denied our language and culture, loss of respect for women. We were denied those traditional lifestyles, disruption of spiritual foundation, denied traditional roles. European values focus on male-dominated society through their religion and governments. So the impacts, again, of that colonization, family breakdown, family violence, high suicide rates, denied traditional roles, denied language and culture, sexual abuse, low self-esteem. The spiritual foundation was broken, legislation and government policies enforced male-dominated values and breakdowns of Native family structures. The Indian Act destroyed traditional structures of spiritual, family structure, and survival off the land. So our future, again, moving forward, women are recognized as life givers, main teachers in preparing our youth for the future survival of the people. Our spiritual foundation is core to our Native beliefs. Our children, our elders, our men and women all have respected roles, balanced roles of men and women, strong, healthy families, and the elimination of family violence. So really, when we look at what's happening across the nation, the disruption of family and culture, that historic trauma causes deep breakdowns in social functioning that has lasted for many years, decades, and even generations. So how do we move forward, and what do we do? So women are reclaiming leadership roles within our community. We are recognized as life givers. Again, we are the spiritual foundation and the core of Native healing within our communities. We are creating strong, healthy families and eliminating the family violence. We are restoring our balance. So it's really, this quote comes from Nahanni Fontaine. She works with MMIW out west. You hear this discourse constantly. They're putting themselves at risk. It is very strategical and methodical attack on Indigenous women and girls' bodies in order to be able to colonize. When you have a colonial history that deems some people's bodies less than and some not, inevitably the colonial violence that comes with colonization will be imparted on the bodies that are deemed less than. And that is Indigenous women and girls in this country, as well as our two-spirit relatives. So recommendations of how we can move forward. We need culturally based, gender-based, trauma-informed approaches, including the central importance of building relationship with survivors to ensure their voices shape services. Prevention, including education in schools, parenting programs, public awareness campaigns, community conversations about healthy relationships, danger signs, understanding historical trauma and its impacts, and cultural teachings that can strengthen family. We need safety of survivors, including creating safe spaces, using outreach workers, providing information on where to get help, and creating simplified access to services. Supports for survivors need to include counseling, mentorship, peer support, safety planning, support groups for survivors and mothers of survivors, advocates and navigators who support survivors to access services. We also need to transition to a different life, including long-term counseling, support programs, emergency travel funds, relocation and name changes, transitional housing, and culturally safe, trauma-informed employment programs. Agency training and collaboration, including cultural safety training, development of a promising practices portal, relationship building, development of collaboration tables and joint action, particularly among police, health services, and Indigenous frontline providers. And hugely, we need policy and system reforms that include changes that are needed in policing, courts, healthcare, and conducting more research to determine the extent and nature of Indigenous human trafficking in the mining and other resource industries, really understanding that the pipelines and the man camps are one of the highest levels of violence against Indigenous women. So again, how do we move forward? Currently, right now, with my role with MPSS, we are developing a whole new system innovative model of healing on the land. We are working with nurses, addiction specialists, doctors, social workers, and we are also partnering them with our pipe carriers, our medicine bundle carriers, our sun dancers, bringing in ceremony. We're diagnosing them in both Western and traditional knowledge. And so where a doctor might prescribe prescriptions for post-traumatic stress disorder, we would look at that and say they also need a grieving ceremony. That woman needs a cedar bath for the trauma of sexual violence. We balance both, and there has to be a respect and a willingness moving forward of both Western and traditional knowledge, because right now we're in a very Eurocentric healthcare system where only Western medicine is valued, and the medicine people within our territories are very much negated and disrespected and not valued within healthcare. And really, we as the traditional people and sovereign people of this territory, we know that it's through ceremony, through our lodges, through our healing, through our whippy, our nippy ceremonies, our sun dances. That is the way that we're healing. We cannot heal from Western colonial violence in a Western way. And so this is where we're finding our healing, and this is what needs to be implemented in mainstream agencies whose mandate is to work with First Nations people and to heal First Nations people. Then in that toolbox of resources, you need to have your elders, you need to have elders setting policy, you need to work with survivors, and you need to work with frontline Indigenous healthcare workers who know about colonial trauma and sexual violence against Indigenous women. There's a whole history and before of how we got to where we are today. And so I do this work for my daughter, Nadana Cedar Smoke, Ogamagijikokwe. She is a knowledge keeper. She is a pipe carrier. She is a language speaker. She is an academic. She is a sun dancer, a bundle carrier, and she is my reason for being. And she is also 12 times more likely to go missing and murdered or be a victim of violence within our own sovereign territory here in Williams Treaty. I need Canadians, I need each and every one of you to value and respect my daughter and all Indigenous youth as we move forward through this colonial trauma. So I say, Chimigwech, please reach out to your supports and helpers within the region. And I say, Chimigwech.
Thank you everyone who has joined us today for Take Back the Night York Region event. My name is Yami and I use they, them pronouns. And I'm so grateful to be here with you today. I'm joined by my co-host Claudia, who uses she, they pronouns. Take Back the Night is a global movement that started in the 1970s. In the UK, Take Back the Night started as a response to serial murders when police told women to stay in after dark while they were chasing a perpetrator. The perpetrator was targeting sex workers, and there was only a public outcry when non-sex working women were targets. This is why sex work is so integral and so important around our movements for justice, especially our movements to end gender-based violence and end sexual violence. There have been several incidences of violence against women and femicide that have sparked public conversation about the need for safety and resources for women, femmes, and non-binary folks. In 1977, the first Take Back the Night was hosted in North America in Pittsburgh. From there, it's grown to a movement that happens every year around raising awareness and the prevalence of ending gender-based violence. Ironically enough, it's my 14th Take Back the Night. And so it's an important event, and we are glad that you're here.
Thank you, Yami. So the first Take Back the Night York region was actually held in 1998 on Georgina Island. It's important that we remember and highlight that moving the event further south in the region has distanced Take Back the Night York region from its roots on the island, and we must recognize the effects and isolation this has caused to Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit folks, and community members. It is important that we continue to work not only to be inclusive, but to take direct action to highlight the impact on Indigenous people, involve Indigenous people, and amplify their voices and their inherent value in the work to create awareness and eradicate gender-based violence. Sexual violence is the only violent crime in Canada that is not declining in occurrence. Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks experience violence at a rate nearly triple that of non-Indigenous women and girls. The ongoing effects of colonization and oppression of Indigenous communities, and particularly Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks, and gender non-conforming folks, creates an added layer of vulnerability of experiencing violence.
In building on working to create inclusive and accessible service and support for Indigenous communities, we must also recognize and incorporate knowledge of added vulnerabilities of one's likelihood in experiencing sexual and gender-based violence. For example, we know members of the 2S LGBTQ community are 3 times more likely to experience violence compared to heterosexual and cisgendered individuals. We know that disabled folks and folks living with disabilities are at an incredibly higher risk of sexual violence, especially those who are women, girls, and non-binary folks, and gender non-conforming folks. Half of all trans folks, and specifically trans women, have reported that they have been sexually assaulted at least once in their lifetime. And we know that income disparity poses realities on why folks choose to stay in situations. And so it's also an important part for us to recognize that middle and upper class counterparts don't have to consider that. So while those are all extremely staggering statistics, there are still gaps as well within our rape crisis movements, within our sexual assault centers, in terms of sustainable funding for the work. We also want to just take a moment to acknowledge that tomorrow marks the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation here on Turtle Island. And so many folks will be participating by wearing orange shirts and thinking about, as my colleague Claudia made mention of, the ways that ongoing colonization and sexual and gender-based violence was a tool of colonization. And so we hope that you are taking time in your communities to honor the day and honor Indigenous survivors. We know that, as Claudia mentioned, Indigenous women are 3.5 times more likely to experience violence, whether that's physical, sexual, in comparison to non-Indigenous women.
So, in expanding on this, we would also like to call attention to the ongoing issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks in Canada. Violence against Indigenous communities has not stopped. Tatiana Harrison, Noelle O'Soup, Quem Manuel Gottfriedson, Savannah Pukuyak. These are the names of just a few Indigenous women who have been killed or reported missing in the last few months in Canada. It is crucial that we say their names, that we recognize and honor them alongside all the other missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks. As we stand here as individuals, service providers, and survivors, it is imperative that we understand and fully bring to the community's attention that service agencies have a long way to go to make services inclusive and accessible to Indigenous communities here in Canada. In building on this, we as individuals and community members must actively work towards this. Truth and reconciliation is about more than just awareness, though it can start there. It is about creating meaningful relationships, continuing to educate ourselves, listening, learning how to do better, and genuinely supporting Indigenous communities and individuals through informed action. We encourage you all to continue to educate yourself on the ongoing impacts of colonialism and to learn how you can support Indigenous communities and individuals. Read through the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Attend webinars and workshops. Listen to and learn from Indigenous individuals and communities. And put your learning into action, tomorrow and every other day. Truth and Reconciliation is not just a single day. It is a commitment to change. Take Back the Night is typically held as an in-person event. However, with the ongoing pandemic and public health concerns, we have decided to host virtually this year. The pandemic has not only heightened the need for extending public health services, living wages, affordable housing, childcare, and paid sick leave, but has also brought to the forefront the other crisis we are all living through. Statistics show that calls reporting intimate partner violence nearly doubled during the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns. We also want to highlight the repealing of Roe v. Wade in the United States. This is a decision that affects millions of birthing people where their reproductive decisions are no longer their own and their rights are taken away from them in some instances their rights are criminalized. Mm-hmm. Although this is a ruling from the American Supreme Court, this decision reflects a worldwide resurgence of the removal of fundamental rights and freedom of marginalized people. This is something the Take Back the Night York Region Planning Committee kept in mind during the preparation for tonight's event. Our theme this year's event is I Belong to Me. Our bodies and what we choose to do with them should lie solely in our hands. From what we choose to wear, to reproductive rights, to sex work, we firmly believe that we belong to ourselves, and we will continue to advocate and ensure that we receive the protection, support, and affirmation that we all deserve.
Tonight, we will hear directly from survivors about their lived experiences of sexual violence, gender-based violence, and human trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation. We will also get a chance to watch performers, artists, and see Take Back the Night committee march and be part of a candlelight vigil. I would like now to introduce the first video of the night. You'll be introduced to some of the organizations that were part of the committee, powerful committee, folks who are behind the scenes making this event a reality today. You'll be introduced to Yellow Brick House, Belinda's Place, and Care Community Connections. You will hear from Jennifer Richardson with over 23 years working in the anti-human trafficking sector. Jennifer Richardson is considered an expert in her field with extensive knowledge on human trafficking here on Turtle Island. She is known for her research on sexual exploitation and for her innovation on leading partnerships across all sectors. Jennifer uniquely understands the barriers and challenges that face victims of human trafficking, as she too was a victim of human trafficking for many years. Jennifer works to create positive change with policy and systems and programs so that people who are being trafficked are more able to access services and supports that are needed.
In 1978, the Rose family sold her home, which then became Yellow Brick House, a place of caring, hope, and love for women and children escaping violence. Since then, Yellow Brick House has been providing life-saving services and prevention programs to meet the diverse needs of individuals, families, and communities impacted by violence. Our counselors are available 24/7 to take calls from women in crisis. Our crisis line is a critical first step for women experiencing abuse, and we ensure that every single call for help is answered. We have 2 emergency shelters. Inside our walls, women and children know they are safe. They learn to rebuild their lives with courage and confidence through our diverse programs. We offer individual and group counseling sessions for women to help them heal from the impact of trauma. We provide access to legal information and support, transitional housing support, and community service referrals. In essence, we help families rebuild their lives.
My name is Camille, and I'm the Manager of Housing and Community Supports here at Belinda's Place. Belinda's Place offers emergency housing, transitional housing, drop-in and outreach services for those identifying as female who are over the age of 18 and who are not accompanied by partners or children. We aim to connect every individual with appropriate supports and resources in order to successfully obtain and retain their long-term housing.
Hi, I'm Marie Morton. I'm the Executive Director of Care Community Connections, and we're here this year supporting Take Back the Night York Region. Care Community Connections provides support for people living with HIV and Hep C. We provide harm reduction supports for people who use substances, and we provide support for the 2S LGBTQ+ community. We have special supports also for women in the community who are at disproportionate risk for conditions like HIV and Hep C. We really want to see everybody turn out this year in support of Take Back the Night. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Richardson, and I am someone who has lived experience of being sex trafficked. For a number of years, I was trafficked all across Canada and into the upper part of the US. I managed to escape that situation and heal from that experience by going to a program that was designed specifically for folks who are trafficked in Winnipeg called TERF program, TERF. And I went to that program for several years, and then able to heal from that experience and move on with my life. I originally didn't plan on working with other people who were trafficked. I went into the addictions field, but in the addictions field, noticed that several of the people who I was working with had also experienced some type of exploitation, oftentimes by drug dealers or gang members who most people wouldn't necessarily identify as a trafficker, but that is what they were. I ended up having the luck, I would say, of getting to go and work at the TURF program as a social worker for many years, and then went on to manage and design several other programs. In 2008, I was asked by the Minister of Family Services at the time in Manitoba to come into the government and design a program for social workers and police to work together to locate high-risk missing children. We'd had a number of children who were murdered, who were sex trafficked, and their murders still actually to this day have not been solved, which was extremely unfortunate. I knew all of those children and had worked with them, and really wanted to change the outcome for kids who are trafficked. And by looking at the two systems that are often interfacing with kids who are trafficked, felt that I could make a difference in that space. So I ended up actually managing that program for several years in Manitoba with the Winnipeg Police and our CMPD division, and led the strategy for combating exploitation and sex trafficking in Manitoba for several years. In 2017, I believe, I applied for job as the director of the Provincial Anti-Human Trafficking Coordination Office in Toronto, and was successful in that competition, and moved myself and my family to Toronto to lead Ontario's anti-human trafficking strategy, which I did for about 6 years, and recently just left the government to go back into the community. I'm now working with an organization called the Ontario Native Women's Association, ONWA for short, as a senior director there over their strategy and communications. I had never really planned on being in the government for as long as I ended up staying, but I think, life takes you on paths sometimes that you don't plan. And, I had a great team at, in the province. It was a hard decision to leave, but I really felt that, my giving and gifts and strengths to the provincial strategy, that I needed to go back into the community now and help the community in all sorts of different work. So not just in human trafficking, although I am still doing some of that work as well, but also in helping ONWA to develop their strategic plan and implement that plan. If someone had said to me, when I was being trafficked, that I would end up leading two provincial government strategies and working very closely with the federal government, I probably would not have believed them. Uh, I again didn't see myself as a government worker. I always kind of see myself as a social worker and working really close with the community and kids and families. And that's kind of where my heart lies. So I think that looking back over my career for the last 25 years, I've been very lucky and fortunate to have lots of different people give me different opportunities to really make a difference at a large system level. Because we need that as well. Most folks, working in the communities, they make a difference with, several families, but it seems continual. And it seems, that old fable of people catching the babies downstream, but the babies keep coming and people have to keep catching them out of the water. I really did want to look at trying to reduce the babies going into the stream. And to do that, you need to do it at a systems level. So, I really hope that people are able to do some of that work as well in their roles in the community or in their healing, that they're able to speak to some of the political folks who, do have decision making in our society, and can really ask people for what they think they're going to need, because it will be different for people if they are a victim of a sexual assault, or a victim of human trafficking, or a victim of domestic violence. Some of those differences will be, very present for them, and we need to help them speak to the folks who make decisions about getting the services and skill sets that they need to move on in their life. If you've heard me ever speak, or you Google me, you might hear me say that I am someone with lived experience of being trafficked. And I say that because, for a lot of people, um, they have, an outwardly feeling of themselves as being a victim for many years. And then, people move into feeling like they've survived the experience and they're a survivor. And lots of people identify as a survivor. I identify as someone with lived experience because I don't feel my whole self as being a survivor anymore. I have lots of other skills and gifts and strengths that are not just someone who's been sex trafficked, but someone who's led government strategies and led programs and done research, and an academic and a mother and lots of other things I would identify being, other than just a survivor of human trafficking. So I really do hope that, anyone watching this sees that, someone who has been a victim of some type of violence can recover from that and live a well life if they are able to access the services and supports that they need. And that, in hearing, from me for a few minutes, that you're able to do the same as well if you're in that situation. Ontario does have lots of supports now for victims of human trafficking or survivors of human trafficking. We didn't, have a lot in 2017. There was a few programs that had been operating and some folks that had been training and doing some work here, but it wasn't at a systems level. The government really wasn't necessarily supporting those programs with long-term kind of core funding, and so that is available now to folks, and I'm very pleased and proud to have been a part of the team to have made that happen. So I do hope that if you are experiencing that type of violence, that you're able to reach out and get some help for that, because you can recover and you can be well and you can live a good life that is not you being in the violent situation. So thanks for listening to me, and I hope you have a great night listening to the rest of the folks.
We would like to give a big thank you to Jennifer for being courageous enough to tell your story and for allowing us to hold space while doing so. As we mentioned in the beginning of the evening, it is imperative for sex work to be a part of the conversation when it comes to Take Back the Night. This is why we are so happy to have had Butterfly Asian and Migrant Sex Workers Action Network on the committee this year to highlight the work to protect and defend sex workers in the region. We will now hear from Staris, who is a community organizer at Butterfly Asian and Migrant Sex Worker Support Network. She organizes in collaboration with Asian sex workers and massage workers to end the criminalization of sex work and the anti-sex work, anti-trafficking agenda. She has been supporting massage workers in Newmarket in their fight against a racist bylaw that has been targeting low-income Asian workers in the massage industry. So we'd just like to give a warm welcome to Staris.
Hello, we are Butterfly, the Asian Migrant Sex Worker Support Network. All the Asian workers are here right now with me. We need to acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land that as Asian migrants. We would also like to acknowledge that the constant struggles of BIPOC and LGBTQ two-spirits plus communities. Thank you, Women's Support Network, for inviting us to be part of the Take Back the Night this year. Thank you for the meaningful conversation and the meetings leading up to this event around how historically Take Back the Night as a response to gender-based violence was also about the sex workers who were the original target of violence in the streets. Thank you for your effort to better understand how our Asian migrant communities can be disproportionately targeted for violence and how to reduce barriers to accessing your service. When sex work is conflict with trafficking, anti-trafficking projects can cause us greater harm through conflict anti-sex work agendas or end-demand legislative campaign which further stigmatize rather already marginalized workers. However, when you, our allies, to gender-based violence, dare to openly to be the solidarity with us, then you are letting us and other migrant massage and sex workers know that a moral anti-sex work agenda should never to be put before our lives and safety. No one left behind. We advocate for change because our community of migrant sex workers are vulnerable. Our network was created to support and mobilize migrant women who work in massage parlors or are sex workers because they are target for violence both by abusers and by the state. Criminalizing people on the basis of their immigration status and what they do for work further victimize women, making them more vulnerability to robbery, abuse, harassment, making this a systematic issue that needs to be addressed at the state level. This criminalized sex work. There's one quote from a worker. I'm working in an apartment with 2 other workers. I was being assaulted and sexually assaulted for 3 times in a month. The robber treat us like a money machine because they know we are illegal. I can't call the police and I won't call the police because I would rather being robbed than arrested. The management of the building blackmail us. I've paid them $4,000 and they are asking for extra $6,000 in order to allow us to continue working. After I pay the money, they still issue a letter and evicted us. I just want to work. Why do you keep saying I'm a victim of trafficking? I just want to survive and work. I'm treated as the mud on the floor. Anyone can step on me. I can't speak out because I'm treated as illegal so they can exploit me. Sex work is work, and we all deserve safety, dignity, and justice. No matter our race, language, gender, immigration, or social status, sex work is work. Because we fear going to the police, and we are made targets to violence. But do not mistake this for us asking for more policing to make us safer. Because the police also have caused our community harm and therefore do not make us feel safe. Today and every day, they're actively targeting us in terrifying workplace raids. We also have members who have reported being harassed and blackmailed by police for sexual services with threats of reporting them if they don't agree. There's another quote from a worker. I'm not a traffic victim. I just want to work. I'm using my own hand and my own body to earn a living to support myself and my family. When they arrest me, they search all my stuff and took my money. The $7,000 the police took was the income I earned from 2 months. Why did they arrest me and take me my money when the police said that they're protecting me? And other sex workers, she has to reduce her work due to her health condition. She is being charged just being helped by others to answer the phone and set up a date. After being charged, I can't work anymore. The police took my phone and all my money. I have lost my apartment and become homeless and have no income. I can't even afford to pay pay for food. Not only me, my dog also lost her home because I can't afford to take care of her. I do not force anyone to work. I do not exploit anyone. I have so many nights wanting to end my life because of this injustice. This is not the law protect sex workers. This is law punish the woman to punish the sex workers. We have over 200 workers who are being taken, charged, arrested, detained, or deported, which is the result of an anti-trafficking investigation in the last 5 years. In 2020, the government proposed Bill 251 to give unlimited power to law enforcement so they can enter and inspect any place at any time without warrants. The inspector even can examine, demand, remove, or copy any things that they think are relevant. The people must speak to the inspector. Bill 251 is not about protecting victims of trafficking. The real purpose of this law is to expand the power of the police and law enforcement and increase anti-Black and anti-Asian racism and violence. Our members are exploited as posters victims, needing rescue to justify the funneling millions of government dollars into these anti-trafficking raids. New police task forces are funded and created for this so-called rescue raids that have sent many of our members to immigration detention and deportation. We are now in Newmarket, a place which said that they will eliminate violence against women. However, the town of Newmarket continue abusing sex workers and massage parlor workers. The town and York region do not listen to us. City councillors have enacted discriminatory and racist anti-Asian bylaws explicitly designed to shut down all Asian massage businesses. It excludes low-income Asian women from accessing needed business license. 6 massage parlors in total have received around $50,000 in fines. This is a ridiculous amount that we cannot possibly afford. One massage parlor alone already received half of the total fine. This is how Newmarket is choosing to treat vulnerable women? Shame. We have said it before, and we will say it again. We are not trafficking victims. We have limited job opportunities without English fluency, and we choose our work because the conditions are better than other options. Here are some quotes from Newmarket workers. The town has given us a hard time during the process of license application. They reject our application by claiming that the credentials don't meet the requirements, or we are all human trafficking victims. The city threatened us the daily fines $4,000 to $5,000 for remaining open without licensing that we know that they will not issue to us. Tickets are posted on our doors, driving away our clients. All of this comes on top of the standard police harassment and intimidation all Asian workers face. They wait outside of our business, pull our door, take pictures and videos, and issue us tickets. We live in the fear every day. We have to speak up for ourselves and our livelihoods. We cannot take this any more tickets or fines. This racial bylaw has been removed. If Newmarket politicians succeed, our business would be forced to shut down. We will all be forced to run out of the town and lose our all assets. One worker has saying this: Newmarket is my first spot. It must be really sentimental for me to close it. Because of it, I have established a solid economic foundation that allows me to bring my family over here and unite it together. This industry allows me to balance between my family and work. Although I received government support during the pandemic, I now have to make regular repayments. If the massage parlor has to close down, how can I pay back? I also want to make money and pay taxes by my own ability. Why does the government discriminate against Asian? This is really unfair to us. These moral and political agendas conflict sex work with trafficking and aim to shut down our businesses in the name of rescuing us. We demand rights, not rescue. It's not a singular event that's happened in Newmarket. In York region alone, over 100 massage parlor has been shut down over the years. By targeting Asian massage workers and sex workers, the local government is promoting a hatred of sex work. We want to emphasize that call to eliminate sex work is no different than a call to eliminate sex workers, to murder sex workers, by endangering their livelihoods. In 2014, 4 massage workers were murdered in York region, but nobody remembered this. So please, believe our members when they said they're not voiceless trafficking victims to be rescued. We are powerful, resilient workers who fight for our labor rights and protections. We are target for the sexual violence. Therefore, we need labor rights and status for all. We are target for state violence. Therefore, we need policy change. This fight requires solidarity and collaboration with allied organizations like Women's Support Network could publicly demand discrimination of sex work and demand an end to racist bylaws which compromise our livelihoods. We also would like to thank CAYR Community Connections for supporting us. Just as we will not blame victims for being out at night, we will not blame sex workers for work. Sex work is work. We invite you to join and learn about the issues faced by our members and hear what the community organizations can do to fight back and stand in solidarity. We are powerful together. Here is what you can do. Sign our letters and petition to fight against the discriminatory anti-Asian bylaw and anti-sex work agenda from Newmarket City Council. Second, join our rally outside the Toronto court this Monday to end criminalization of sex work. Allies are invited to join our daily watch parties every day of the constitutional challenge. Please come and support us. Third, continue to follow Butterfly on social media about next week's events. It's so important. It's about safety and dignity of the workers. Last but not least, if you're the resident of Newmarket, please let us know. We really need the support. And for Take Back the Nights, Butterfly would like to have some chanting together. No one left behind.
No one left behind.
Sex workers' rights are human rights.
Sex worker rights are human rights.
Discriminate sex work. Discriminate sex work.
Decrim sex work.
Decrim sex work. Sex work is work.
Sex work is work.
Rights not rescue.
Rights not rescue.
Status for all.
Status for all.
And racist bylaws.
And racist by law.
We're powerful together.
We're powerful together.
Solidarity not rescue.
Solidarity not rescue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. 反族种族歧视，还我人权。Anti-racism.
And anti-racism.
Give me human rights.
Give me human rights.
要公平。
Thank you so much, Staris, for your powerful message. Thank you all for being here today. So much love to you. So much love to you. And for folks online, you got the action. You know what's up. You know how to support. So let's make sure that we show out and show support. Whew, I'm feeling so energized. So I would like to introduce our next set of speakers, which is a next set of recorded videos for the evening. So we have the Community Legal Clinic of York Region and Sandgate Women's Shelter, who will talk about their work in community. This will be followed by a video from Freedom, who is a Black queer neurodivergent artist of various mediums. They especially love to write and sing, and they are a survivor of many kinds of abuse and a peer support moderator of a peer-run ADHD program. And then we will have, let's see here. Okay, and then we'll also, last but not least, you'll get to know about Shelter Movers, Victim Services of York Region, and the Women's Center of York Region, and York Region Center for Community Safety. So enjoy the video, and we'll see you back soon.
Hi, my name is Jeff Schlemmer. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Legal Clinic of York Region. We are the free legal clinic funded by Legal Aid Ontario and York Region to help low-income people in York Region who may be having legal problems. The types of work that we do are primarily housing law, social assistance law, immigration law, and employment law. In addition to providing legal advice and representation, we also provide community legal education, where we're always happy to go out into the community and meet with a group and provide them with legal advice or instruction about any area of law that might interest them. We, for example, often help immigrant groups who are coming up to speed on Canadian law by giving summaries of that law. Please do feel free to contact us if you are having a legal problem. Hopefully, either we can help you or we can refer you to somebody who can give you advice. Feel free also to look up our website, which is clcyr.on.ca.
Thank you for supporting Take Back the Night York Region and for standing in solidarity against gender-based violence. Sandgate is a York Region-based organization that provides support to survivors of intimate partner violence. We have 2 emergency shelter locations who support women and children who are fleeing these situations. Support is provided through our women's advocates and child youth workers who are located on site. Sandgate operates a 24/7 crisis line, 1-800-660-8294, 1-800-660-8294 for support, referrals, and intake. Sandgate also has a community program team which consists of transitional housing workers and outreach. This team supports both in-shelter women and community women. Referrals can be made through the crisis line or through community partners. The outreach team consists of public education, women's group, short-term crisis counseling, and our Let's Talk Child Witness program. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to support the Take Back the Night 2022 York Region event. Have a great day.
Belonging to me. Belonging to myself and coming home to my own body, mind, and soul was a long journey, filled with multiple people, places, and different levels of abuse/abusive situations. We live in a society that has taught Black women in covert and overt ways that taking care of herself and living just for herself is selfish. I refuse to engage in those harmful practices any longer. As a trailblazer of my family, I set up boundaries. I moved away to my own space, a place I now call home. I moved away with the help of organizations such as Women's Support Network and Elizabeth Fry and a lot of other great organizations. I left toxicity behind and started to invest in myself. It was a lonely journey, and for a while I wasn't sure I would make it / be able to survive, but I kept trying despite the adversities constantly in front of me. I now have people that I can trust and are part of my chosen family. As someone that is neurodivergent, it is also essential that I learn to unmask, i.e., stop trying to act neurotypical or acting that I am without ADHD or autism. Since my childhood, I was shamed into acting a certain way and omitting parts of myself for the convenience of others, but since I have stopped doing that and allowing my mask to come off in safe spaces, allowed to express my gender in a way that suits me, I'm non-binary and go by they, them pronouns, I have found community, and while one's journey is dependent in ways on oneself, community is essential. I once had a worker tell me that someone once said, community is the difference between sobriety and addiction. And for me, community was a difference between life and death. I cannot and have not done all this alone, and I am very grateful for that, and all the love that surrounds me. Belonging to myself was a long fight against racism, classism, sexism, ageism, misogynoir, and ableism. And because of multiple intersecting identities that I present in this world / in society, I will never stop fighting those things. But I no longer have to go at it alone. And part of my goal is to spread that community and make sure others don't have to go at it alone. My name is Freedom. Thank you for listening to a bit of my story, and have a wonderful night.
Shelter Movers is a national volunteer-powered charity that provides free moving and storage services to women and children fleeing abuse. In collaboration with local businesses and community partners, we help families transition to a life free of violence.
Violence and abuse actually knows no boundaries. It's all across the board. Unfortunately, it is an epidemic that affects everyone.
People need to have the opportunity to leave that particular situation. We shouldn't allow finance to dictate whether they can leave an abusive situation or not.
But they don't have to do that with Shelter Movers. With Shelter Movers, our clients have more options. They're not alone. They have the power that's already in them, and we remind them of their inherent dignity.
Victim Services of York Region is so thankful to be part of this year's Take Back the Night. Victim Services is a non-for-profit charitable agency that works in partnership with the York Regional Police to provide 24/7 service to persons victimized by crime or tragic circumstance. We attend a home, hospital, crime scene, or police station to assist on cases of gender-based violence such as sexual assault, human trafficking, and intimate partner violence. We are happy to stand in solidarity with each of you and our sister organizations, raising awareness on the importance of taking back the night.
My name is Allison Herman, and I'm the Director of Development at the Women's Center of York Region. Our mission is using a strengths-based, trauma-informed feminist approach. We provide opportunities, support, and resources to all persons who identify as women on their journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Since 1977, we have worked tirelessly to achieve our mission by offering skill-building group programs and one-on-one counseling at no cost to women. Our core programs include enterprise and careers and financial empowerment, which helps women gain economic independence through financial literacy and pre-employment programs. We also offer the Making Changes program, which helps women gain confidence, communicate effectively, and set healthy boundaries in all areas of their lives to help move towards social independence. Our one-on-one support has two streams to ensure women are receiving timely and effective services. One stream focuses on emotional support, while our transitional counseling is for women exiting abusive relationships safely. Women's Center of York Region is proud to support and be a part of York Region's Take Back the Night.
Hello, my name is Gulai and I'm the Program Manager at York Region Center for Community Safety. We are an organization that supports individuals and their families who have been impacted by domestic violence or intimate partner violence, human trafficking, and sexual violence. And essentially the way that we do it is we coordinate multiple different services under one roof model, where we have various different partner agencies who provide services from housing, legal support, court support, and so much more. And we assist clients in navigating the justice, health, and social service systems.
So welcome back everyone to our live broadcast. We'd like to say a big thank you to all the organizations that were on the committee this year and how they really showed up and were ready to help for this year's event. Sometimes we forget the work that we do for each other, and it is important for all of us to be recognized for what we have done and continue to do. I want to give a warm welcome to our next speaker, Phoenix. Phoenix has decided to share her story with us today, and I encourage us to lend an attentive ear to this brave woman who has decided to share a piece of her story with us. I'd love to give a warm welcome to Phoenix.
Hi, I would like to take the time to thank Women's Support Network of York Region for having me here tonight to share this space with you and to share this story. They say it takes only one step forward to make magical dreams come true. Your trafficker will promise you the world, tell you that your life will be so amazing with them, and that they're saving for your future. That has to be the funniest one. But the cold reality of all that manipulation is that they're only doing it for themselves, and you ultimately could be disposable at any time. She came from a small town on a small island in Canada. She grew up in a house that never really felt like a home. She never felt like she belonged there. There were many addictions and mental health around her. She had access to substances at a very early age. Her father was incredibly abusive to her and her mother and controlled all aspects of the house. This taught her all the wrong ways a man should love and treat a woman, and how a woman should behave, which in the future really affected things. Then her childhood was shattered when she was kicked out of her home way too young. She was forced right then and there to grow the heck up, which she did. Things got really weird right off the hop when the impressionable young girl met and moved in with a woman who once again was very manipulative and had some bad views on the world, which were passed down to the girl. While living with this woman, the girl had access to drugs and alcohol at her leisure as long as it was in the home. The girl was exploited by the woman's partner. And again, she was on another new adventure when she was kicked out of another home for something that wasn't her fault, and again, she was gaslighted into believing it was all her fault. She would go to the library after school to check her instant messages in chat rooms that she frequented to find a guy who wanted to have some fun due to her needing somewhere to sleep for the night. Otherwise, she could go to the local bar before 9 because they didn't ID then and find someone that way. She was having survival sex already and didn't even know it. Under the current Ontario law, she was a sexually exploited child at the time of these events. It all changed the day she met her first trick in the chat room. This man messaged her, a minor, wanting to hook up for some fun, and he explained what his fantasy was: paying her. The girl liked the way this made her feel at first. The man not only wanted to spend time with her, but he wanted to pay to be with her. Many years later, this view would change for the girl. She then met another guy from the chat room and agreed to go to another province to meet him. He thought she was 18 because he was 22. But she was a minor. She didn't like the man, but she knew this was a much better option than what she had been doing before. A more stable life, so she thought. Eventually, he found out the truth, but decided to keep her around, mostly to pay for everything for him and his parents. She felt like a modern-day slave. She worked overtime at McDonald's until her 19th birthday, when she finally decided enough was enough, and she was on to her next adventure. She moved into a friend's apartment as a couch surfer, worked multiple part-time jobs, and got some of her life back, until the day her life changed. She became hooked on opiates for the first time. They were like a warm hug when you're feeling down, that best feeling, that warmth she had been missing since childhood. She wasn't often given affection, which made her feel not important or loved. She wasn't told, "I love you," or "I'm proud of you," which made her feel not good enough. She quickly noticed that she was running out of money and needed to find ways of making it faster to keep up with her growing drug addiction. She reached back out to the trick she had met previously, who had some advice and things for her to do to make money until he could come see her. She was given a contact number of somewhere to call to possibly be hired as an escort, which she was told is someone who escorted rich people to fancy dinners and events. Boy, oh boy, did she have it all wrong. These people weren't necessarily rich, but more your average everyday people who had most times some seriously wild fantasies they wanted to explore. She got hired and worked for the same lady at a legit business as well. She would work 8 to 8 p.m. at a legit health spa and 8 to 8 a.m. at the agency. She would have meals cooked for her and clothing brought for her when she had a call to do right after work. The lady had the girl for 24/7 for about a year when she was fired for something that never even happened. The girl had a point to prove now. She didn't need her, and she was going to continue with her plan, massage therapy school in September. But first, she was going to see what the big city Toronto was all about, but only for 2 weeks, just to save something for school before it started. After she bought her one-way ticket, she only had about $300 left to her name. She found her way to a seedy, low-budget motel outside the downtown core. Things were not going that well. Survived day to day, but nothing huge happened. The worst part was she now didn't have money to return home either. One day, she went to get something to eat at the restaurant next to the motel, where she met this stunning man, almost glowing. His presence gave her that same feeling as the warm hug. She wanted to talk to him, and she did. Boy, oh boy, did he charm her. As we know, the girl was addicted to opiates at this point. She was dope sick in a new city where she didn't know anyone. But the day she met this man, it was like all that sickness and withdrawal went away. She forgot about it for the whole day. This man made her feel special, sexy, and amazing. He gave the girl what she was missing: confidence. He quickly had her doing what he needed to be done. Daily goals were a huge thing. She was a drug addict, living from telly to telly, city to city, across Ontario. She started noticing the lies and the holes in the stories. The dreams he was feeding her were lies, all lies. The views the girl had on the game were much different after coming to the big city. She used to feel privileged to be meeting these people because it's not only men that call for service. She felt she got to know the real person because they weren't paying her to stay, they were paying her to leave. They could be their true, authentic self because she didn't know them personally, and ultimately, she didn't care what they wanted to do. But after coming to the big city and meeting this charming man and being exploited once again by someone she loved, those views were gone. It wasn't something that she enjoyed anymore because she had to work even if she didn't want to. The fun was taken out of it. It still gave her the confidence she lacked, but it would never feel the same otherwise again. But it was too late. She was already in too deep. She was groomed to feel she had to be down for her man through thick and thin, that she was deeply in love and would do anything for her man. She spent many years with this man, being abused and broken. Sadly, he passed away, which ultimately freed the girl. She was left alone, only to discover that those dreams she had been fed for all those years, definitely not true. There was nothing left for her to be okay and survive. She bounced from bad situation to worse situation when she was presented an opportunity that she didn't know at the time, but would change her life. And she had an enormous decision to make quickly. Would she take the few $100s she had on her and get a hotel room to return to work? Or would she take that opportunity in front of her? So, by swallowing her pride and admitting she needed some help for once and she couldn't do it alone, she took that opportunity in front of her and accepted a room at the homeless shelter that was especially for her. While there, she met the most beautiful group of humans ever. They showed her that she truly mattered and that anything was possible for her, which was huge for the girl. The girl was so broken and damaged, but these beautiful people took away some of that shame and pain enough for her to start believing the kind words they were telling her. No one ever believed in her like that before. Flash forward 2 years later, and I am beyond proud to be sharing this space with you tonight, to share my story with you beautiful folks. I now have a stable apartment of my own, with my own money that no one controls. I am now off methadone since November 25th, 2021. I have built the most supportive group of solid folks, a thing I never had before, community. I have returned to school and am taking a college program. I am living the life I used to only be able to dream about, and I never thought I would be so lucky to live this life. Women's Support Network of York Region is that amazing organization you heard about earlier. They help me fill my tool belt with many valuable skills to rebuild my confidence and get to where I am today. With their help, I now know I am strong, I am worth it, and I have an amazing future ahead of me. Reaching out for help was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But it turned out it's been the most rewarding thing I have ever done for myself. I can now walk with my head held high in this amazing adventure we call life. Suppose you or anyone you know is going through something similar to this. In that case, I assure you that reaching out to this organization will open a door to a fantastic community that will always be there for you. You are not alone. Never forget how strong you are. You are beautiful. You are important. And you are worth it. Thank you, beautiful folks, for holding this space for me tonight to hear my story. I hope you all have a beautiful evening, and don't forget to smile.
Thank you so much, Phoenix, for sharing your story. Thank you for your openness and your words, and just deeply moved. It's an honor when we get to hear the stories of survivors. And I'm just so glad that you're here with us today to share your story. You are a remarkable woman. So thank you. I'm going to invite folks online and in the space with us today to just take a moment, if you feel comfortable, if it feels accessible for you in this moment, to place your hand on your heart. You can keep your eyes closed or open, whatever feels most comfortable for you. I'm just going to invite us to take a couple of deep breaths here. You can do this sitting, standing, whatever feels good for you. Inviting you to inhale through the nose. And exhale, release. Doing that 2 more times. We would now like to take a couple of minutes to read the names of victims who did not get a chance to share their stories. From the last couple of months of 2021 to now, those who have lost their lives to gender-based violence, who deserve to be uplifted and remembered. We really do want you to take care as we read these names. So, if you need to step away, that's okay as well. and know that we're here to support. So we will begin.
So we'd like to remember, honor, and recognize all those who have lost their lives over the last 12 months to gender-based violence and to femicide. And these are just names of folks who have lost their lives in Ontario. Julia Ferguson from Toronto. Rose DePinto from Toronto. Lynette Sicaria from Toronto. Linda Cruz Marquez from London. Jane Doe from Brantford. Jane Doe from Wellesley Township. Christy Nguyen from Markham. Vincenza Galoro from Toronto. Christina Yadram from Northern Bruce Peninsula. Jane Doe from Windsor. Ava Burton from Whitby. Tatilda Noble from Whitby. Jane Doe from Vaughan. Myrna Hurd from Petrolia. Linda Frederick from Ottawa. Nabila Aminzada from Toronto. Lisa Marie Hartwick from Renfrew. Chantel Lebrun from Smith Falls. Brittany Doff from Toronto. Jane Doe from Arnprior. Jane Doe from Newmarket. Deborah Neal from Shelburne. Jane Doe from Brampton. Sandra Gauthier from Keswick. Jordana Yakabuski from Renfrew. Tafash Riley from Mississauga. Jane Doe from Mississauga. Sahur Yar from Ottawa. Jane Doe from London. Amanda Lyons from LaSalle. Bev Stevenson from Brussels. Marie Gabriel from Ottawa. Florence Matilda O'Ray from Kingston. Jane Doe from Waterloo. Tien Lee from Toronto. Ruth Ann Longboat from Toronto. Emily Bailey from Hamilton. Jane Doe from Kitchener. Jane Doe from Killaloe. Jane Doe from Cambridge. Jane Doe from Dunville. Katrina Blagden from St. Catharines. Jane Doe from Toronto. Vanessa Kakegumik from Deer Lake. Jasmine Reddy from Ottawa. Anne-Marie Reddy from Ottawa. Henrietta Visky from Toronto. Kinga Kristen from Collingwood. Vanessa Vergioni from Brampton. Nima Dolma from Toronto. Megan Krant from Toronto. Evdokia Gioputsis from Toronto. Cynthia Sitzes from Chatham. Nicole Mercer from Newmarket. Daniela Malia from Toronto. Angelica Sigod from Toronto. Elvie Sigod from Toronto. Jane Doe from Sudbury. Anna Monica Koreksika from Mississauga. And Jane Doe from Alliston.
Thank you, Claudia. And thank you, everyone. It is important to remember that we will continue to dream and cultivate joy in the best ways we know how. We will continue to be in solidarity. We will continue to fight. We will continue to support, to heal, and to love. In the next segment of recorded videos, we will be watching the Take Back the Night March organizers, volunteers, and communities members participate in. You will see a poetry performance from Lou Palmer, who is a published writer of speculative fiction, nonfiction, and poetry on the environment, mental health, and Black relationships to nature. They are a recipient of the Octavia Butler Memorial Award, and they are currently completing their first novel, The Hungry River, after receiving generous support from the Canadian Council of the Arts. We will also bear witness to a dear friend, Dainty Smith, who is a storyteller, an actor, a producer, a curator, and a founder of Femme Fatale, Women and Femmes of Color in Burlesque. Thank you.
watching the sunset on Tennessee hills. I wish I could capture it, I never will. 'Cause I'm not a painter, can't stay in the lines. Just sitting here sipping on dandelion. My body, my business. It's starting to rain, but I don't feel a thing. Sitting out rocking on that old porch swing. 'Cause I found me something that tastes like springtime. Just sitting here sipping on dandelion wine. All my life I've known some things you can't control. You can make plans, but they'll change on a dime. So pour me one more glass of dandelion wine. Preachers and dreamers, they both believe in the patterns and powers that we can't quite see. My business, my body, my business. Sit back and sip on that dandelion wine. Oh, my life I've known some things you can't So pour me one more glass of dandelion wine. Claim our rights, take us dancing back the night. One more glass of dandelion. Claim our rights, take us dancing back the night. Take us dancing back the night. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We won't take it anymore. We won't take it You can make plans, but they'll change on a dime. So pour me one more glass of dandelion wine. Pour me one more glass of dandelion wine. Whose body? My body. Whose business? My business. My body, my business.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for having me here at Take Back the Night. My name is Lou Palmer. I'm going to read you some poems this evening as well as a short story. There is some heavy content, so please take care of yourself. But there is also joy and self-reclamation. This is I Only Miss the Birds. My mother sends a film of the forest, a swamp. I only miss the birds. She pans across the moss pine that knew me as a child, a gray spine, the upturned comb of a stiff tamarack. I only hear what's behind her, head dripping and shoulders greasy, dry yellow foot, thick finger roost, to grasp the little world in the picture. I only feel the air close and hot, a terry cloth bathrobe, fresh from soap and sour from yearning body. Lips of a tin can, a sweetness at the bottom of the bottle, a syrup that drips from pores and clings to the fibers of his hair. The river pools on the edge of green my mother wants to show me. Black, brown, river cuts itself, and asks me to enter it. My mother tries to show me home, but I only miss the birds. This is a full belly after Togo Eisen Martin, The Course of Meal. I have a poisonous notion about what happened in the trees, behind the house, at the riverside where I heard him sing. At the heat sunrise, a full bowl, a sweet baby's breath, and a handful of weeds. A portrait of tough heads sitting straight in church rows. I had a belly full of sand, charcoal on my fingers, and the night song so sweet it coaxed the blooms into open eyes. My tired feet, and a warm slip under my tongue. Come back, still child, at the foot of White House, toe tucked in soil greens, knees sliced on the cool tar. What's got a heart open, crack like brick? What's got a brown shoe stomping, wet eyes and rocking head? Pat a back and make it sound like drum. Rub sugar across your teeth, sweet it, make it sound like lost bird in the cotton tree. He knows you're weeping like the early morning cries to the water. Make a meal of my insides. Turn out the stew pot. Why is it yellow with what's missing? Why the girl cry and foot stomp? Why the bird give up and stop witnessing what happened again and again on a swollen mattress? Hear the slick silence until it burns you. A witness was given to me. Black wings, eyes round in his head, dangling like baubles in the pine cotton evergreen. I think he was a voyeur that watched as the soles of my feet met rough earth, down the hill from my grandfather's house, downhill and belly full, only a bird to know. That same man that came to my room, not even a bird to know. I lie in grass, hand, weeds, and lamb's breath. Why my knees break? Why whisper throat? Why look up to God in sky, see him look down on me, make me clean, hand full of tough string, head full of mama whispering blame on my belly, belly hungry for shame. This is 3 bodies or nothing to answer for. A bit of a messy poem, but I think that's okay. From before I can remember, I learned the necessity of forgetting and forgetting again. Before I could speak, I had words pulled from my belly. I won't speak much. These are the same stories, the same hands, the same travel through time. I call to myself in the morning. I call out across the expanse where I don't dare take a step. My body floats behind me as I walk, watching, waiting for me to claim it. I keep it with me, just in case I am in need, just in case I need hands or a mouth to speak that once forgot. I dress well, empty shell, self-decorate a phantom. I have 3 selves, the least important you see standing here in front of you, the most beside me, child me, and one, I hope, far in front. They piece me together like gifts on a string some mornings, and still some nights. Still there's no justice for the feeling that comes when I am alone between walls. There is no justice for the feeling that comes while I dress these bodies. But still in a day, I bring joy. I taste, I touch, I am touched. I care, I am cared for. I ask, I tell, I give, and am given. I have no one to answer for, and no one to care, to carry. Thank you. I'd like to read one final thing for you, a short story called Night Bloom. In the last sweet light of day, baby opened the back door and stepped herself into the dry yard that rolled from the dirt to a wide river. She planted her heels firm in the soil and stretched up towards the sky. Her hair sits stiff and dry. The warm light soaked through her thin shirt and lay across the still summer water. High up, the blue arch of the broad sky stretched around the house on the hill. Some nights when the wind lay cool and the sky lowered itself over the yard, Baby watched the river water from high up in the house, where lilies float with faces smiling wide. Trapped between the walls of the house, Baby lay awake under the covers, listening for the sounds of creeping shadows coming up the stairs. When the air became too hot and too close, she dashed from her cot to the window. There she watched the river lilies reach up to the night, their faces unafraid and tipped towards the moon. The house lay quiet this evening, grown folks asleep inside, nestled around piles of unwashed dish and empty bottle. Baby sit in yard and rock back on her heels. She bent her ear to the grass. She listened hard and thinks she hear bugs and worms talk to each other in the dirt. She pressed her finger into the stiff, gritty soil and feel tickling, crawling things. The wind in the yard see her playing there and swoop down to brush a kiss on the top of Baby's head. She sing to it. It swirl round, wrapping her shoulders and pushing gently at her back, tugging lightly on her hair. Baby let it sweep her up and lead her across the yard, tumbling slowly. She reached one foot in front of the other, stepping lightly across the roots of the big yard tree. Standing high up to meet the dome of the sky, pine and sap on the edge of the river water. Baby walked down the hillside. She wiggled her toes where the grass meet the damp ground. Her feet stick to the mud. The wet soil of the river slide its way around her ankles. With her arms at her side to keep balance, Baby move into the water. It crawl up her front and lap at her belly. The cold river caused her to chill, and for a moment Baby paused. The creaking porch door lay open, swinging into the evening air, with the shadow behind it. Baby carry on. 1 foot bottom stuck, into the riverside she walk. Deep into the river she go, where the water rested her chin. She turned herself around and looked back the way she come. The house lay big and white, sitting atop the hill. With his long back towards the outdoors, the shadow stand in the window. Baby watch him, the house and her whole world perched on the hillside. The water rise up and lap kindly at her eyes, wash over them and away again, resting its wide reach against her cheeks. Look away, child, it say. Baby's skin began to get wrinkly in the water. It looked like soft petals with wide ripples. The river water kissed the back of her neck. Her thick hair soak it up and unfurl. It float on the surface in a wide ring around her face. The river soil grasped her little foot and pulled it deep in the mud. She stretched up tall from it and her body grow long. She turned her face up to meet the coming night. Her mouth opened wide and she smiled upon the sky above her. She smiled upon the sky above her. She smiled upon the sky. Night bloom. Thank you very much for having me this evening. I'd like to thank the organizers of Take Back the Night, and I wish you all a safe and wonderful night, and I appreciate you being here to listen. Bye.
said, baby, I felt brutal desire. No, I did not. No, I did not. Baby, I felt brutal desire. No, I did not. No, I did not. I'm the king around here. Don't make you my queen. I'm the king around here. Don't call me no dirt. I'm the king around here. Don't make you my queen. I'm the king around here. I felt real desire looking at her. Yes, I did not. You know I did not. I felt brutal desire looking at her. No, I did not. You know I did. I said, baby, I felt brutal desire. No, I did not. No, I did not. Baby, I felt brutal desire. No, I did not. No, I did not. I'm the king around here. And I'll make you my queen. And I'll make you my queen.
We want to take a moment to extend a sincere thank you to you all for being here and holding space with us tonight. To come together, connect, and convene for such a meaningful, noteworthy, and necessary cause is an honor and a privilege. By being here, you're helping to make meaningful and measured changes in your community. The next segment of our live programming involves our candlelight vigil. So we will now hold space for the candlelight vigil. We ask everyone in the audience to join us, whether you have a candle at home, a light, or if you'd just like to take part in the moment of silence. You will notice that our Take Back the Night committee members and audience members are currently holding electric tea lights and scrolls of paper. So again, we watch us and join us virtually in turning on a light and listening as Yami reads a note, and when instructed, we will hold a moment of silence.
For all those whose lives has been lost prematurely, for all those who have been denied justice, for all whose body has been taken from them, for the people whose voice has been silenced, for all those who are hurting and healing, for all those whose choice is everyone else's but their own, for all those whose land we occupy, for all those who have been denied joy and safety, for all those who cannot be here with us today, for all those who have been told they are not worthy, for all the victims, survivors, and thrivers, we take a moment to honor and remember you.
Thank you to our attendees, our sponsors, contributors, MCs, and all those behind the scenes for helping us to ensure a beautiful and seamless ceremony tonight. As a function of all our efforts, we were able to successfully ring in York Region's 24th annual Take Back the Night. As we reflect on this opportunity to honor and facilitate Take Back the Night in York Region, we humbly acknowledge and appreciate the magnitude of community support.
Armed with creativity, resourcefulness, and tenacity, we were not only able to host and witness a successful event. We would like to end tonight with calls to action. We ask you to take time to participate in the ongoing journey of reconciliation, which includes truth, in a way that is meaningful. We can attend local events, participate in ceremonies, discover resources, and improve our practice, spread awareness about the ongoing issues of gender-based violence in our community, to continue educating ourselves on the prevalence of gender-based violence, and to continue to listen, believe, and support survivors. Thank you for joining us as we take back the night tonight. Thank you, everyone.